afternoon. Welcome to this celebration of an amazing life. It's hard for me to not call him Wally, but for today's sake, we will celebrate Walter Gordon Aurich. What an amazing life it was. So as we gather together today, it's been quite a summer. We first went through the sudden and unexpected loss of Lila and now of Walter, and so I will invite us to pause for a moment and to catch our breath, both physically and spiritually. Then I'm going to open us with words of prayer as we embark on this journey of celebration together. Gracious God, as we gather in this space, we have come from many different places, both geographically, emotionally, and spiritually. We ask that in this time together, whether it be through the laughter, the tears, or a mix of both, that your Spirit might bring to us the healing that we need on this grief journey. Help us really do our best to capture the fullness of this life and to claim our own piece of this healing journey together in this space. We ask this in your name as our guide. Amen. So today there will be many stories, many words, many memories shared, and it seems appropriate that we would begin the celebration with the Aurich's oldest child, or eldest, or most life-experienced child, Lee, today. And Lee, if you would, I will invite you to open us with words of Walter.
I'm enjoying those in the background, so I hope you put it on loop. I'm going to talk about the essence of my dad, his qualities. His passions were folk dancing. When he first moved to LA, he was dancing 5 nights a week. It was his method of meeting women. He had learned from earlier days and earlier experiences in Seattle and in Navy on the few leaves they got. And my parents bonded over folk dancing. As I like to say, as they recounted, they met on the mats in the back of the girls' gym at a high school. Now, there was a folk dancing going on in that, and there's a pile of them. It was one of the few places to sit, and Dad was with a couple of guys, and Mom and a few other women wandered over. And that was the beginning. They continued dancing, and they were dancing twice a week up through their 80s and early 90s. He loved folk dancing. He also was an avid walker. He walked 13 miles a day during his peak, wore out shoes, 1 or 2 pair a year. He liked ham radio. He had a 50-foot antenna tower in his backyard, and he's contacted Australia with it. And he was devoted to Mom. Each argued that they got the better end of the catch. He was creative and inventive. Our garage door faces the street. You couldn't see whether it was open or not from the house. He used to accuse us kids of leaving it open. And so he wanted to have a way to know without having to go out to look. And he put a sensor on the door and wires into several points within the house and a panel of lights, and you could tell from looking at it whether they were open or closed. Just a little. He loved finding new uses of tools and objects. He would get great glee at using a screwdriver or a wrench or some other gadget in a very different way than was intended by its maker. He enjoyed driving with the GPS in his car set to a different destination and would laugh as he disregarded the instructions to turn right at the next corner and kept going straight instead. And Mom would say, if I was ever stranded on a desert island, Wally's the person I would want with me. His creativity, his ability to invent and figure out how to make something, he could do anything that we needed. He was very supportive of my mother. Family folklore is he proposed several times before Mom said yes. At the beginning, they had a traditional marriage. His job was very intensive. He was working long hours and then was out of town Monday to Friday at a classified unknown location somewhere. Turns out it was Area 51. For 6 to 10 years, he traveled there by plane every Monday morning and back Friday. But he was not threatened as Mom blossomed. In fact, he took great pleasure in her successes. Mom did not brag about what she did, so Dad would speak up for her. He would sing her praises and recount recent accomplishments. He loved to tell stories, and I have a few examples. When he was about age 9, a group of kids, 3 or 4 of them, decided they wanted to go see the tall ships that were anchored in a nearby lake that are connected to the bay by a series of channels. And Dad and they found an empty metal mortar mixing tub with several boards and a few coffee cans. They launched for the 1-mile trip out to these ships on the lake. As they got close, they were not allowed to board. They started rowing towards another destination, realized that their mixing tub was now half full of water, and none of them knew how to swim. So actively bailing, they hightailed it back to shore and survived one more of his stories. He started working at age 12, washing dishes. By age 13, he had a paper route. He then bought a better paper route. By age 14, he'd saved enough money to buy a car for $15. He got in an accident as a 14-year-old. Fortunately, unlicensed, of course. He and the other driver, neither seemed to care. Probably another unlicensed driver. And he sold his car as is for $35. He eventually sold his paper route. He bought a corner paper stand, which included 3 boys on corners and routes. And he was really raking in the money then. And ultimately, he started working with his older brother, greasing trucks and graduating to washing, fueling, and parking those 18-wheelers in these spaces where there's 1-foot clearance as you're backing into the space. 1 foot on each side. He was very friendly and accepting. I missed the story. I missed 2. At the start of World War II, he enlisted in the Navy about 3 months before his high school graduation. The Navy asked, "What job would you like?" And he said, "A mechanic, vehicle mechanic." So they assigned him to radio school. He learned Morse code. He worked on a troop ship. In this ship, the beds were stacked, I think they probably always are, 6 to 7 high. His bunk was number 5, very near the top. He did not like that. So he learned that the ship had a brig with 3 cells, all unused. So he slept in one of those cells for about 10 months until he was evicted when a prisoner in solitary confinement, they needed the cells. So you can, after the war, he used the GI Bill, went to the University of Washington, got an electrical engineering degree, and he got pocket money and money for his mom by bridge tending, which was opening and closing the bridges for tall ships as they go by. He loved the night shift because he was a night owl and it gave him time to do his homework. After graduation and 2 years of graduate school, he decided to take an easy summer off before starting his career. He continued bridge tending, and as he was doing that, one day he saw a classmate stop and photograph the bridge and take various pictures from that vantage point. And he scrambled down and asked, "Why? What are you doing?" And the guy said, "Well, I'm going on a 3-month tour, and I want to be able to show photos of home. And then Dad said thanks, went back up in the tower, thought about it. The next day, he saw his friend going by. He raced down from the tower, and he said, "Can I come?" And the guy said, "Sure, we're leaving next week." And so Dad got a passport, plane tickets, made a large deposit, and went on this trip. And what he got was a 3-month youth hostel version of the grand tour of Northern Europe. He learned folk dancing, which put him on the path to Mom. He was friendly and accepting. He had a big heart. He adopted Sherry and me when he married Mom. He said, "I grew up in a large family, 4 brothers and sisters. I'm comfortable with it." He made Sherry and me feel equal he wanted to make Sherry and me feel equal with the new entrant. Our brother Mike was then born 2 years later. Sherry and I fought over who got to have him in his bedroom. We both wanted him. Came with the larger room. He treated all with respect and love. Several folks thought of him as the father they had missed. He really had a big heart, and it was loved to share with everyone. As he aged, he developed a superpower. He became the favorite of caregivers. Unlike many clients, he was cooperative, welcoming, and appreciative. Those last couple of years, he lived in the moment. We asked him at one point, we were all telling a story, do we have our favorite stories about Mom? And we turned to him and said, "Do you have a story?" And he said, "I have many wonderful memories of Lila, but my forgetting is better than my remembering." My sister has just arrived, and so this is Sherry Aurich. Sherry Aurich, Hardy, hyphenated.
Okay, I'm going to do some readings and a Bible passage that meant things to me. Okay, the first one is called "I'm Free" from Dazzle.com. "Don't grieve for me, for now I'm free. I'm following the path God has chosen for me. I took his hand when I heard him call. I turned my back and left it all. I could not stay another day to laugh, to love, to work or play. Tasks left undone must stay that way. I've now found peace at the end of the day. If my parting has left a void, then fill it with remembered joys, a friendship shared, a laugh, a kiss. Oh yes, these things I too will miss. Be not burdened with times of sorrow. Cook for the sunshine of tomorrow. My life's been full, I've savored much. Good friends, good times, a loved one's touch. Perhaps my time seems all too brief. Don't lengthen your pain with undue grief. Lift up your heart and peace to thee. God wanted me now, he set me free." And then there's a short passage from Psalms 56, verse 8. "Tears are prayers too. They travel to God when we can't speak." The next reading is from Psalms 91. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. Because He loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me. I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. And then I was thinking of a couple of interesting remembrances. One is to sort of show how the time has changed. Many, many years ago, when I was in, I think, elementary school, possibly early elementary school, I remember a time when our dad had a moped, and he let us ride on the back. This was days before helmets, days before knowing we should wear probably leather jackets in case we fell off. And as kids, we're told to just which part of the back of the moped was hot, the exhaust pipe, and to just keep our legs apart from it. And another fun remembering was many Sundays after church, we would go out, I believe, to Bob's Big Boy a lot. That was a favorite with our family. My final reading is from, let me see which, from a company called East Urban Home. As I sit in heaven, as I sit in heaven and watch you every day, I try and let you know with signs I never went far away. I hear you when you're laughing. I watch you as you sleep. I even place my arms around you to calm you as you weep. I see you wish the days away, begging to have me home. So I try to send you signs so you know you're not alone. Don't feel guilty that you have life that was denied to me. Heaven is truly beautiful. Just you wait and see. So live your life, laugh again, enjoy yourself, be free. Then I will know you. With each breath you take, you'll be taking one for me. Thank you.
Lee gave me and we permission to call Walter Wally, so we will do that for the duration. Thank you, Lee and Sherry, for getting us off to a great start. And to continue that spirit of remembrances, I'll invite Paul forward now.
Joan and I met Wally and Lila when we attended our first West Valley folk dance session at Canoga Park Elementary School in 1965. As time went on, our relationship deepened. We danced with them almost every Friday night. Subsequently, we were part of an exhibition group associated with our club, and we met monthly. In those days, we were invited to perform folk dances at convalescent homes and occasionally at a venue where the people were awake. Wally was a very hospitable host when we came to his home after our exhibition group function. The group morphed into Dine and Dance as our exhibition capabilities diminished. Wally was a folk dancer most of his adult life, and Lee talked to you or told you how they met. But when they came to the Valley, they were one of the earliest members of our folk dance club. He liked all types of dances, but mostly enjoyed couple dances as part of a set or as with other couples. Scandinavian dances were his favorite, the hambo in particular. And maybe we'll hear hambo music today. Nope, we won't. Okay, we tried. He always had a big smile, as you can see on many of the pictures, especially when he danced. He was very intense and precise in his dance and in everything else he did. He always wanted to know exactly how to do the step. Wally was kind, and in some people would say stubborn, as evidenced by his determination to recover from the accident that he had many years ago. He never complained, even about the tasteless food at the convalescent facility. Later, as he lost some of his memory, he still had muscle memory and danced with us via Zoom. He was dancing with us long into the COVID shutdown. In addition to dancing, Wally also was active in the administration of our club. He was president several times and a delegate to the Folk Dance Federation for many years. He was our equipment chair, making sure that we had the right audio equipment, selecting microphones, amplifiers, and speakers, also positioning the speaker at the right height. It couldn't be down low, it had to be at ear level, so it had to be just right. Wally was an engineer's engineer. He and Mike Emsch both worked at the same company. Mike recalled how Wally testified honestly in court about data that saved Hughes from a big fine. Wally also worked at Lockheed Skunk Works, as Lee mentioned, and occasionally he would be flown to a site near Mojave. On those flights, he noticed they always passed Telescope Peak. His curiosity was piqued. So at some point, he asked Harry Keyes and myself if we would be interested in hiking to the peak, and we were. We drove to the trailhead and spent the night there before setting out the following morning. Well, to those of you that know him, Wally was a belt and suspenders kind of guy, and it went beyond his clothes. And this was exemplified on the hike. At one point, as we neared the top, Harry noticed that Wally was carrying 2 gallons of water in his backpack. And that is heavy, and I wouldn't do it. So we finally convinced him to leave the extra water behind a rock, and we went on to the peak, and when we came back, we picked up the water and took it back. I think he probably watered a tree with it. Wally and Lila were an integral part of our folk dance group and our lives. They will be remembered and missed. Thank you.
So before we continue with the remembrances, we'll sort of pause and catch our breath as we hear a powerful reading that Karen will share by a Unitarian Universalist colleague.
This poem is called Our Lives Matter by Maureen Killoran. We come together from the diversity of our grieving to gather in the warmth of this community, giving stubborn witness to our belief that in times of sadness, there is room for laughter. In times of darkness, there will always be light. May we hold fast to the conviction that what we do with our lives matters, and that a caring world is possible after all.
So before we continue, I want to reference two traditions here at Woodland Hills Community Church meant to honor Wally's memory. The first, you'll notice at the right of the steps, is something that we call the Candle of Life here at Woodland Hills Community Church. We light that every time one of our beloved souls transitions, and so today I wanted to call your attention to the light that shines so brightly in Wally's memory. And the second institution is someone who, when Wally and Lila arrived, I believe was in the role of pastoral assistant, and over the decades that passed, she knew and experienced Wally in many ways. So with that, I will invite Signe to share or continue the remembrances this day.
You know that I like to look and see who you are. And feel the energy in the room, because we're all here and we'll never be here again like this. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I have written some notes. I hope I'm able to read them for you. And if I stumble, I ask your forgiveness. Wally Aurich, a traditional and modern man. The man I knew was kind and gentle, a mild-mannered fellow. With the recent deaths of Queen Elizabeth and Ken Burns' television special this week, we have probably all been reminded of the history with which Wally lived. Wally's unique 96 years, however, is what we're here to live and share today. Along the way, he learned about loyalty and respect and love. He partnered with Lila to raise 3 kids, Lee and Mike and Sherry. I don't know if, as a young man, Wally had a deeply rooted faith. What I do know is that it took a kind of boldness to change churches, to leave one church when it no longer fit one's own progressive or progressing needs and thinking. It was Charlie Zaka who had the vision of a retired men's group. A dozen or more or less retired men gathered mid-morning, monthly, to share their stories, their ideas about the world and politics, faith, travel, and whatever. Light refreshments were provided by a few women. Not my idea of a progressive today in 2022. And those are my standards. Where was I? Oh, yes. The whatever part. The whatever part that these old guys, not all of them were so old, but they were all retired, what they shared. Somewhere along the way, a few risque jokes crept into the enjoyment of the gathered. I was not invited as a staff member, and I didn't eavesdrop, but I heard from spouses how the men enjoyed their time together. And some of those jokes made their way home to be enjoyed by both partners. Who knew? Not dirty, not stuffy, just the fun of life. A basic goal here at Woodland Hills Community Church is to be growing into being whole, into our holiness. Wally was a ham radio operator. Wasn't that when he fell off the roof? And he was supervising the man that he had employed to be up there on the roof fixing things. I remember Lila heard him land on the cement pavement. Oh my. His body was broken and she was fit to be tied. Such an interruption to their daily planned lives. He was determined to heal and be active again, and he did heal, and eventually adopted a scheduled time of long neighborhood walks with a friend. Wally and Lila were world travelers. They were financially frugal enough to be able to go about the world in new and wonderful ways. Wally was a modern man. He wore a toupee for a time. He was the family grocery shopper. How important in life are the consistencies and continuities? That was Wally, a traditional modern man, 96 years old, dancing into the last few months of his life, perhaps to meet the dancing spirit of his longtime folk dance partner, Lila.
So after this series of remembrances, we're going to switch gears a little and share with you the scriptural passage that the family chose for this occasion. And so I will invite Helen forward to share that reading from the book of Isaiah.
Thank you. This reading is from Isaiah chapter 40, verses 28 through 31. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. God does not grow faint or grow weary. God's understanding is unsearchable. God gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint.
So that passage that the family chose to honor Wally's life was a wonderful choice. For those words were given to a group of people who had been crushed, defeated, and drug off into exile, the Israelites. They were languishing in an uncomfortable place far from home, and they were having great difficulty finding a way to envision a road forward. And for the Aurich family, who over the past few months have endured the loss of both Lila and Wally, I'm sure you can relate to some of what had been going through the hearts and minds of that audience. So that's why I believe this morning's passage can be so helpful, for it points us toward one of the great ironies in life, that sometimes in order to find a way forward, we have to look back to the past. Now, in the passage you heard, the prophet reminded the people of how God had constantly brought them through all of the struggles they had faced, time after time after time. God had brought them through the period of enslavement at the hands of the Egyptians, through those long 40 years of wandering in the desert, and through subsequent conflicts with neighboring nations. And the prophet reminded them and us that every time we face a challenge, we make it through. It is those past successes that give us the strength and the hope to go on. So as I prepared for today's service, I realized Wally had a very similar effect on those he knew, especially here at the church. For Wally had a wondrous way of always grounding himself and us in the things that mattered most, in giving a sense of perspective. Let me share those three things that grounded Wally that I most think of. The first, without a doubt, was family. I could give you many reasons I say that, but the one that sticks out at me is every single year when we observe the All Saints' Day celebration, Wally was always the first to get the pictures in. And they weren't just recent pictures of the family. Every year he included his mother and his sister in that celebration. He was also quick over a cup of coffee in the fellowship time to share the latest achievements of his family members and to celebrate the arrival of new. And one of the things that I remember most of Wally, especially these last few years, as his mind was struggling, it was always the way that he would light up when Lila entered the room. Family, family, family was his anchor. The second thing that grounded Wally and can ground us is his deep and abiding faith in the power of community. Didn't matter whether that community was at the table of a church council meeting as they were struggling to fix a problem, whether he was dancing with a group of fellow folk dancers or debating politics with the retired men's group. Wally knew something that we need to remember and reclaim in these days following our COVID isolation. He knew that we are always better, stronger, and healthier when we live in community. That was his second anchor. And third were his passions or hobbies that gave Wally's life meaning well into his retirement years. Whether he was folk dancing with his beloved Lila, walking the streets with friends and Maria and family members, or talking current events with a retired men's group. Wally knew that the secret to success in life is having what Signe often calls the big B, the balance, and boy, did Wally do that well. So as you, Wally's loved ones, work to find a way beyond your feelings of loss to the place of hope that the prophet tried to point us, remember Wally's life and example. Remember to ground yourself always in the relationships that matter most. Remember to fight the urge to isolate or withdraw, and instead enter community to inspire you. And finally, number 3, always pursue and develop your passions. For if you do those things, then Wally's legacy will live on in and through your life. And as we close our time together today, I'm going to ask that we do so by sharing in a hymn that has special significance for us here at Woodland Hills Community Church. And let me tell you why I say that and why I associate it with Wally in particular. Back in the 1990s, our denomination, the United Church of Christ, published one of the most progressive songbooks or hymnals in all of the United States. And while there were many who loved it, there were some who did not. For that hymnal left out some of the old favorites and had the audacity to make changes to the language of the tried and true standards that some knew so well. Well, shortly after the hymnal was released, this local church, like every other, had to wrestle with the decision of whether or not they would use it. And as Lila often reminded me, thanks to the leadership of Wally and others, this community decided to embrace and to celebrate those values. And because of Wally, over the last 30 years, those songs that we sing each Sunday have shaped the faith of generations to come. So while I will invite us to sing together, not great is thy faithfulness, but great is your faithfulness. For the traditionalists, you will make it through, I promise. And for the non-traditionalists, may we all together celebrate that spirit of commitment and inclusivity that defined Wally's life. So I'm going to slide over to the keyboard. The words will be projected on the screen, and let us sing together. And this is a hard one to sing sitting down. There we go. So rise and body if you're able. So when I give benedictions, especially at a memorial or celebration of life services, I always want to leave you with a challenge so that we can find a tangible way to keep our loved one alive with us. So today I want to close and send you with a poem that is one of my favorites in these occasions. Because when I think of both Lila and Wally, what made their lives great wasn't the number of years they lived, but how they spent those years. So this poem is called The Dash, and it was written by Linda Ellis. I read of a person who stood to speak at a funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between the years. For that dash represents all the time they spent alive on earth. And now, only those who loved them know what that little line was worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things that you would like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. To be less quick to anger and show appreciation more and love the people in our lives like Lila and Wally did, like they've never loved before. For if we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a while. So when your eulogy is read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you lived and spent your dash? Lila and Wally spent theirs well, and may we use their memories to spur us on to make the most of ours as well. And friends, we have a wonderful reception to give you the opportunity to share tears, hugs, stories. And if you'll go up either the ramp or the stairs next to the building and cross through the fenced courtyard area, you will find that reception waiting. And thank you to the people of WHCC who made that possible. So go with God. Amen.